Hi, my name's Dan, and this video is one in a series of short series of videos I'm doing as introductory stuff on how to edit levels in the Unreal Engine. And this is following on from the previous video in which I showed you the use of geometry objects. And in this one, I'm going to show you how to convert geometry objects into static meshes. And it's probably going to be fairly short because it's a fairly simple process. So what I've got here is I've got a geometry mesh. Actually, I've got two geometry meshes because I've got this shape that I made by editing using the geometry mesh editing. And I've got a sphere which is just embedded in the back and is subtractive. First of all, I'm just going to quickly play and show you how that reacts to the player. So it's slightly suspended in air, which is interesting. And we've got collision detection, and we can stand on it, and we can drop into the hole. And as you might expect, we've got a kind of the ability to walk around inside that hole. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep those two. So I've just selected both objects, and I'm just going to make a duplicate. So I'm holding the Alt key as I drag, and I'm making a duplication of both of those objects. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this along with the hole. I'm going to turn it into a static mesh. I'm going to zoom in and down here, and what you're looking for is, you really don't need to see that. What I'm looking for in here is under the brush settings, there's an advanced thing, so usually it's hidden, and you click that, and you've got this button, Create Static Mesh, and that will create a static mesh from the pair of those geometry objects. It brings me up a dialog, so I'm going to work out where to put it. I'm going to put it in my content, and I'm going to call it Made. I should have better naming convention than that. And then if we go into my content, you should be able to see that that is now that static mesh there. Now let's go back in and play and show you something that's changed. So this one here is the one that's still made of geometry brushes. This one here is the static mesh, and the problem is that having created a static mesh, it hasn't created the collision mesh as well for it. So we're going to need to do that in order to make this useful. So I'm going to double click on it to bring it up in the mesh, static mesh editor. Here we are. And I'm going to try first of all the auto convex collision. So I did this before in a video about static meshes. This is going to try best fit shape, and I could increase some of these to make it a better shape, but I want to show you something else as well. So I'm just going to leave this as it is. I'm going to click apply, and that's created a mesh that's kind of got that hole in it. So interestingly, they're still calling it convex. Auto convex, but it is actually got a dent in it. So this is, I think, new for Unreal Engine 5, is that this is creating some more complex shapes than it used to. So I'm going to save that and go back in and see what happens when I go interact with it. And here we go. And I can kind of get in, but it's not as good as the other one. Now I might be able to make that better by changing the parameters on the convex, make convex collision. But I'm going to show you another thing that you can do in the static mesh editor here, which is instead of using a separate mesh for collision, you can actually get it to use the actual object mesh. And the way to do that is here on the right hand side. I'm going to do a zoom in again, and I'm going pretty much down to the bottom. There's some collision stuff here, and there's collision complexity, and there's a drop down box in here, and what you need to choose is use complex collision as simple, which basically means take the mesh from the object and use that. And as you see, the purple lines have come up, and that's the actual mesh for the static mesh for the object itself. And it's a fairly simple mesh comparative to other things because it's been made from geometry brushes. Let's zoom back out again and save and go and test that out. Here we go, and let's see how this reacts. Now, phew, it is doing what I thought it would do, which is you can now walk around it. It's pretty much the same as this one. You might have noticed it's slightly off the ground. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into this particular object, and I'm going to say simulate physics for it, because if I simulate physics, it should drop down to the ground. And I've just clicked that, and then I'm going to press play and go and have a look. And it hasn't dropped down, and I know exactly why. So I'm going to stop, and when I stop, I get this message coming up. I'm going to zoom in on the message. It says, trying to simulate physics on this object, the static mesh component, but it has complex as simple collision. So Unreal complains and won't allow you to simulate physics on an object if it's using complex collision instead of simple collision. And the reason for that is it's protecting itself against the massively more complex calculations it might need to make if it's going to do physics simulation as well as just simple collision detection with that. So anyway, that's a few bits of information about it, and it's showing you how to go from geometry brushes, which is what I've got over here, to a static mesh, which is what I've got over here, including the collision aspects of it. And so that's it from me for now.